The Brooklyn Nets.
Shame on you.
They did not hire Ime Udoka as was reported they wanted to. They hired Jacque Vaughn, and longtime coach in the NBA, Jacque Vaughn, had this to say when he was announced.
I guess I was the write-in candidate in the minds of elections right now, but I'm okay with that. I said to my wife, I might have not been her first choice, and we've been together 20 years, so it could all work out. So off we go.
They signed him to 1 year, finishing this year as a head coach, and he'll be paid next year to be the head coach. Doesn't sound like he is the long-term solution. What do you think about this hire and the notable fact that it is not Ime Udoka?
If y'all think I'm gonna be walking around with grades looking like Lovie Smith and Jacque Vaughn, y'all gonna be waiting.
You're gonna have to succumb at some point.
At some
point, it's gonna happen.
You know what I'm saying? But in all honesty, I played against him in college. I'm happy that he has the opportunity. He's been a long-time assistant coach. He has the opportunity to be a head coach, not only in Orlando, but as an interim with the Nets, and actually has done a really good job in Brooklyn when he's had that opportunity. But as he mentioned, the term interim might as well be in front of his name. If you look at the terms of this deal, it really has him coaching the remainder of this year and next year. If you look at the landscape of how new coaches get hired, especially from within, normally that's a longer term deal. We're talking about how much he got paid. We're not talking about how long the deal is. So he has an opportunity to win the job, but I don't think it's going to be his long term. Ultimately, for the Nets, here's what I'll say. The timing wasn't right for Ime Udoka to get hired. It's just too much noise.
I don't know, Jalen. I'm going the other way with that. It seems like he was the right person, the best available candidate, and there would probably be a news cycle for about 3 or 4 days about the suspension and what happened in Boston, and then it would go away, and they would start winning more basketball games. To me, that would be worth it. It seems to me like the league or someone intervened in this case.
And that happens in a lot of situations. But again, when I say the noise, like NBA news happens seemingly in dog years. So we forget it wasn't less than 12 months ago that the Nets got swept from the playoffs, that KD asked to be traded, that he asked for the GM and the coach to be fired, that Kyrie was denied an opportunity to get a deal. Last year, Kyrie didn't get vaccinated, so he missed half of the games. This year, he's suspended right now. And so all of these things, when you're trying to hire a new coach, become the press conference. The timing just isn't right. So let me modify what you said, though. That doesn't mean they can't still do it, just not right now. Because when people talk about Ime being the candidate for the job, remember, I'm going to be the first person to remind everybody this. He coached in Philly, Ben Simmons. He coached as an assistant as well with the Nets, KD and Kyrie. So he's as familiar with that situation as anybody could be, and is as close to being somebody that can navigate a big three. See, I'm not just talking about KD and Kyrie. When they're healthy and they're on the court, they're going to score 30 points. I know what I'm going to get for them.
It's 70 points right exactly. There. I don't know who gets 40 or 30 or whatever.
But we need somebody that's going to nurture Ben Simmons. And Jacque Vaughn was coaching yesterday, and I was at the game yesterday. Ben Simmons is going to have to be better for them if they're going to be a contending team.
Jalen, you know I love Ben Simmons. You know how much I love Ben Simmons. And I was so excited for Ben Simmons and his fit on this team and how they don't need him to create on offense. They don't need him to shoot on offense, and this is going to be a perfect fit for him. They need defense, and he's defense. So far, doesn't look great. Doesn't look great.
Jacoby, in this, I want to quote the OG Doug Collins. The game is so hard when you can't shoot. Just think about this. Anybody that's ever played basketball, the first two things somebody do when they walk in the gym is dribble the ball or shoot the ball. Ben Simmons is warming up doing cuts and dunks because he's not trying to shoot the ball, especially in front of an audience that might record him when he's walking into a charity event shooting an air ball in the summer. It's a mental block. And so based on that, you're gonna need a coach that's gonna own making him play on the baseline. They're still not owning that. He has to be on the baseline. He has to be on the wing.
If you were Joe Tsai or Sean Marks, Why wouldn't you just hire Ime Udoka, lose the press conference, let the storm blow up, and then calm down? You end up with the best coaching candidate possible, and you actually kind of get him in an opportunity, oddly, where you normally wouldn't have.
It's just that I feel the timing isn't good, but it don't mean it can't happen. That's what I want to keep stressing to you. Why don't you see what happens with Kyrie and his suspension, and if and when he returns? Why don't you let it play out to see if Ben Simmons can stay healthy? And then when the season ends, is Kyrie going to be there long term? Is he going to go to Los Angeles?
I don't expect to see Kyrie on the net.
And so that's another opportunity for you to bring in Ime if you're going to lose Kyrie to nurture a team post him leaving.
Guys, these great contributors to the NBA, they're not getting paid to play basketball right now.
See, the one thing about being a part of this NBA family, it's a boutique. So tight-knit that only 4,000 plus human beings have ever played in an NBA game. 4,000. So each year, the turnover is likely to be 80 players of the 450 total rosters. And by the way, I keep saying 450. When you look deeper into the box score, teams carrying 14 players now to save money on the last roster spot. How about that?
Save money.
Come on, man. Anyway, so what ends up happening is there's always notable people in the volatile job like the NBA that are out of the league the previous season that you just seen ball. Like Lou Will should be in the league.
He should. You trying to tell me he can't give you a hot 12 minutes off the bench against the second unit?
For real. Like, we know if he was on the Lakers and they put him in the game with Russell Westbrook, they would be balling.
They wouldn't stop anybody, but they would be balling.
They would be balling,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so as I look at that roster, it also acknowledges for me the weaknesses of certain teams. So if you the Nets, why you don't take a flyer on a guy like Boogie to play up front and give you some minutes? Like you did it with Andre Drummond. They should have kept him.
Drummond and Blake, Aldridge. A lot of those guys were on the Nets last year.
Well, not Blake.
Yeah.
I think Blake. But is Blake on this list?
Blake is not on this list. He's going to the Celtics.
Respectfully.
He's on the Celtics.
Okay, good. We let's revisit that this time next year with all due respect. And the one thing about a guy like Boogie, this was just recent. Wasn't this like 12 months ago?
Yeah.
Wasn't that right? He was filling in for the Joker and had a 30-point game against somebody. Like, he should be in the league. So also, the other thing I want to acknowledge is what you're going to do after the game. Because sometimes, like I say, only all-time great players choose when they walk away. Kobe chose when he walked away. Mamba out. Peyton Manning chose when he walked away. Like, Tim Duncan chose. A lot of time the game chooses you. And so I just wanted to shout those guys out because many of those guys. And what about Lance?
Lance will be back. You know what I mean? Lance is he's just resting right now. Lance will be back.
Exactly.
With Jerry West on his chest. And one thing that we talk about off wax that I want to recognize
and Melo
is people like me, Jalen, normal human beings that work our job. They work until they're about 65, 70 years old, and then we just pick up a hobby and retire to Florida or whatever. But when you retire at 30, you have the whole rest of your life to look forward to that you have to figure out, which is the unique position that the professional athlete is in.
It is, and I'm glad that you're teeing this part of it up because that's why I always talk about the score of the game and the game of life and the ability to be a multi-hyphenate, the ability to reinvent yourself because these are young men, as you mentioned, the game leaves you in your 30s. Now all of a sudden you still have to be a functioning member of society, contribute to your family, all of the goals and dreams and aspirations, entrepreneur spirits you may have outside of the sport. You know, taking advantage of the things that you learned along the way, the relationships and the people you met along the way. So that's, in theory, when life actually really begins.
And I also think civilians with myself will look at that statement.
Nets against the Mavs in a great one-on-one matchup that ended up with Luka having 36 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists in a very tight game that was really fun to watch. These two sometimes guarding each other going head-to-head.
I must also say this. Those throwback Dr. J Nets uniforms are cold.
Red tights are too much, though. Red tights don't do it for me. Red tights don't do it for me.
Those unis are cold, though. And you're right. It was great to see KD and Luka go back and forth, leading their teams. mano y mano in a lot of ways. Nets being a team that's trying to find an identity. And it was good to see Cam Thomas play good minutes for them, a guy that came in out of college as a bucket. They were trying to figure out a way to find him minutes. Without Kyrie out there, they're getting him minutes. But this was all about the dominance of Luka. See, when I get confused, I think about, do that squad have a him? We just talked about Steph Curry. The Warriors won, why? Because they had him. The Mavs won, why? Because they had him.
Him.
He is I, and I am him. He scored basically 30%, but 35% of their points. They didn't even have 100, and he had 36. That's domination. And so for the Nets, trying to still figure out what they're going to do with or without Kyrie, it's becoming a dire